Prussia, a nation founded on the ideas of war and expansion. The precursor of Nazi Germany, Prussia would expand into one of the largest military powers ever created. So how did it get there, and what exactly was Prussia? The story of Prussia starts with a group of tribespeople in the Baltic region of Europe, whose culture was very similar to the modern-day countries of Latvia and Estonia. The Catholic nations of Europe weren't exactly fond of the Prussians, however, and over hundreds of years their neighbor Poland would begin to resent them, primarily because they weren't Christian, but also because Prussian tribesmen kept running into Poland, killing people, and leaving. Poland would actually go so far as to hire a band of crusaders called the Teutonic Knights to settle the region. These Teutonic Knights did their job in assimilating or eliminating the pagan populace, and for their efforts, Poland granted them this region. Unfortunately for the Polish, they failed to realize that these Teutonic Knights would run into Poland, kill people, and leave just like the pagans who were there previously. Not only were the Teutonics causing trouble militarily, but also civilly, as a mass migration started in the region, which was called the Aussiedlung process. People from all over Germany immigrated to Prussia, and the Polish weren't very happy about this. Fast forward a couple hundred years in the 1400s to the 13 Years' War, when Poland fully invaded the region. This was the end of the Teutonic Knights. The Polish annexed the West Prussian land and subjugated the East Prussian land. The resurgence of Prussia began in the early 1600s, as the last leader of the Teutonic Order in Prussia, still under Poland, died sonless. His duchy was forced to pass on to his daughter's husband, the Elector of Brandenburg. By unifying both of these countries, this created Brandenburg Prussia. When the religious 30 Years' War kicked off in Europe, which threw Protestants against Catholics, Brandenburg Prussia was ran over countless times by neighboring countries, as they were a Protestant nation. The war ultimately ended in stalemate, but more importantly, historians believe 25 to 40% of the entire Germanic population was killed as a direct cause of this conflict. In fact, this was one of Europe's largest wars in history and resulted in around 8 million casualties total, about half as many as in World War I, and keep in mind, this is only 1618. There's no tanks, planes, or modern-day rifles. This war had an interesting effect on Brandenburg Prussia in particular. The next leader of Brandenburg Prussia, Frederick, the Great Elector, would start the trend of a military focus in his country. His son, Frederick, would then continue the trend, but it wasn't until January 18, 1701, when Brandenburg Prussia was fully elevated to an official kingdom after several wars. The country was then renamed to the Kingdom of Prussia. The next leader worth mentioning is Frederick the Soldier King. Taking after his ancestors, he was accredited in giving Prussia one of the most professionalized armies in all of Europe. It was later said, Prussia is not a state with an army, but an army with a state. And now we can finally move on to the famed Frederick II, known as Frederick the Great, or as Voltaire referenced him, the Philosopher King. Now, if you've caught on with Prussia's history, you'll know number one, they like naming their children Frederick. No, I don't know why. And number two, their country was devastated in the 13 Years' War and in the 30 Years' War, and so what would be better than a 7 Years' War to top it all off? Within the first 7 months of Frederick the Great's ascension to the throne in 1740, he invaded the Austrian-Bohemian region of Silesia. This would start the Silesian Wars, which would merge together with many other conflicts and create the 7 Years' War. The 7 Years' War put France, Austria, Russia, and many other countries against Prussia alone on land. Luckily, Britain would help out at sea, but navies can't fight on land, so it wasn't going to be much help directly. Frederick II's most famed victory was at Leuthen in 1757, where around 33,000 Prussians defeated 66,000 Austrians. And if I'm doing my math correctly, that's a 2-to-1 victory achieved by Frederick. Despite Frederick's best attempts, however, he did lose many battles, but the battles he lost still discouraged his enemies, and so when the war ended, his enemies were exhausted. Frederick managed to still acquire the Silesian land he wanted and East Frisia on the North Sea. Frederick's last great achievement was in 1772 in the First Partition of Poland, when he re-seized the rest of Polish-controlled Prussia, officially linking Prussia's land to mainland Brandenburg. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Part 2 will be available next Thursday.